Hi, welcome back to my channel. Long time, no video. Okay. Really, it's been like 2 months, but it's forever in YouTube time. So with restrictions relaxing and games starting up again, let's talk boundaries. Boundaries are important to all aspects of life, personal, professional, and gaming. These can vary person to person in general, but there are at least 5 separate categories they fall into: physical, emotional, mental, time and energy, and finally, material. They're pretty easy to follow. Uh, Physical boundaries should be really easy to do right now. We've, we've been in a plague. Physical boundary is the actual space around you. Some people are okay with more contact than others, and others are okay with much less. If someone says they aren't comfortable, listen to them and stop. Emotional boundaries are your personal emotions or how you feel at a given time. It's easy for friends to be there and supportive when we're doing well, and it's much harder when we're not. Positive and negative feelings are valid and important with this boundary. It allows us to determine if we really have a good support network or if we need to look at forming a new one. It can also help us to understand what we are able to handle in supporting others and standing firm once we've hit that limit. However, while your emotions are valid, what you do with them may not be. Mental boundaries are our thought processes. You have the right to your own thoughts, your values, your beliefs, and opinions, and so do others. This boundary is in reference to how far you are willing to bend before you can't bend anymore. It's important to recognize that this doesn't mean going along with every single thing another person puts out. But it does mean that both of you need to be willing to listen and speak in a respectful way. Sometimes that means not interacting at all. And then next we have time and energy boundaries. This one is hard to remember as a necessity. Many of us push past our limits because of FOMO, or fear of missing out. In everyday life, this looks like doing more work without extra pay, or someone showing up very late without communication. In LARP and other collaborative games, this looks like staying up later than you should because you might miss a very important plot point. And then finally, we have material boundaries. Most of us have learned this in kindergarten. The material boundaries are that you do not have to share your things if you do not want to. If someone decides that they can do it anyway, it's a clear violation. This also goes through how your things are treated once you give them out. Just because you are okay with lending them doesn't mean that you're okay with them being damaged. And when they are damaged, it's a violation of that boundary. These apply to LARP and other gaming as well as everyday life. In LARP, these can mean the difference between a good time and a healthy life balance, and, well, not. It's especially hard when you reach your boundary and others continually push you to exceed it. It can leave you feeling uncomfortable and like you're overreacting. Sometimes, that answer is yes, you are. Most of the time, however, the answer is no. You're not overreacting. You're enforcing a boundary, and they're not happy about it. So, at most games, you shouldn't have much issue with a physical or a material boundary. Many games have rules on touch and how others use other spaces and things. However, it is your choice if you are comfortable with how firm that boundary is for you. If you're not comfortable being touched, you get to make that clear. And if someone keeps violating that, they are in the wrong. It is okay to enforce that boundary for yourself. Mental and emotional boundaries in LARP are a little harder, but you shouldn't hit them too much as long as you remember that it's a game. At the end of the day, you go home, you become yourself again. What happens at a game, while potentially stressful, shouldn't be something that causes you long-term harm. Bleed, or the erasing of a boundary between yourself and your character, is something that most LARPers look for. However, if you make it clear that something is mentally or emotionally traumatic for you, and it continues, either on a staff level or a player level, you may need to consider stepping away. That game may not be a good fit for you. And that's absolutely okay. Though one I do see, however, one boundary that I see happening as an issue in most LARP circles is time and energy pushing. In many games, especially with an older base, there seems to be a culture that guilts players for having to rest or miss a game. There's a strong culture of FOMO. It's important for your physical and mental health to recognize your boundaries. Your limit may not be what Bob the Goblin Slayer's is, and that's okay. This is doubly true if you are a chronically ill LARPer. Just because we can do it doesn't mean that we should. And oftentimes we push back past our limits because while our community says that your health in real life comes first, the opposite is often what is experienced. You can't talk the talk without walking the walk. The correct response to a player of any level within an organization is not to give the impression of disappointment when they say they can't play or keep up. They shouldn't feel like if they can't come, that their friends are upset that they put real life ahead of a game. And that's only for missing an event for some reason. You can't get off work. This doesn't include the mentality in some communities that if you aren't there, you should have a consequence. Sometimes the reason is you needed to rest. Ultimately, taking a break is important. Many LARPers don't pace as well as they should because they've been bullied about it. This isn't always an overt action. It's not like something you can see in a television show and go, oh yes, that's bullying. It can be a refusal to fill in your friend while they took a cat nap. Or that they tend to be invited to less and less things during the game. Or socially relegated to the sidelines, even though they have things that are important to help. This happens to chronically ill players most often. It leads to us pushing further than we should because we suffer consequences that others may deem invisible because it never happens to them. Sometimes this bullying can be because they decided to fence hop and help their game instead of because they needed to rest. In healthy communities, it's not a problem. It's already built into the culture. They just kind of, okay. It's understood that when Jim Bob went to the cobbler's to fix his boots, he was unable to participate, and that Jim Bob's player is free to NPC without consequence. After all, an adventurer needs boots. In a healthy community, there is a distinct separation between what your player does and what your character does. In a less healthy community, it's never outwardly said that fence hopping is bad. When pressed, it's often denied that that's not what they were doing. But socially, there are consequences. If you aren't there, you might get chastised for missing a big important scene or a special mod or whatever it might be. And no one likes to be chastised for doing a good thing. At best, it's not intentional. At worst, it becomes cultural bullying. It's always explained away as an in-game issue, and eventually, it just gets to be where a player stops fence hopping. They stop helping the game, and long term, your game will suffer. However, all of that was a breach of boundary. How you spend your time and energy at games is your choice. Being passively or actively bullied into how you do so is a breach of your boundaries. Some players are better at shrugging it off than others. Best case, you bring it to your game management and decide if that game is something you want to continue. At the end of the day, LARPing should be fun. And if you're not having fun and are constantly on the defensive, it may be time to look at another game or even a different hobby. Every game is different, and many of the best are looking to make their games healthy spaces for everyone. If your game isn't working for you, make your boundaries known. Stand by them. They aren't too much. They aren't wrong. Many times, they're reasonable. Healthy boundaries make healthy people and healthy players. Thank you for watching, and be safe. Plague is coming back around, and have most fun. But stick around to the very end for a really quick announcement. So, look out for a video series soon. I'm working on creating my own game, and I plan to record the process. I feel that LARP should be available to everyone, and that it should be a healthy, safe space. I know that my journey has been hard because there's been a lot of cards to the chest in the history of LARP making. I want to make it easy to others who'd like to create a framework to tell their own live-action stories. It's something I'm very nervous about, and I'm excited to share it with you in addition to the other videos that I do. Alright, bye! Stay safe! Have fun!